This is CBC Here and Now.
A warm start to the weekend, but it isn't going to end that way.
The town office and the rec centre remain closed in Deer Lake. Are people still panicking?
To see another 1-2 cases, and that would not be unexpected.
We'll check in with the mayor to find out.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Anthony Germain. We'll bring you to Deer Lake in just a moment. But first, a look at today's numbers and across the Atlantic provinces, a plea to young people. 3 new cases of COVID-19 in the province today, including one on the west coast tied to the Deer Lake cluster. Here and Now's Peter Cowan is live in our newsroom now. So Peter, what can you tell us about this latest case?
Anthony, it is a girl under the age of 19 in the western region, and health officials did confirm that it is tied to that cluster that they've been dealing with. But there is some important information here, and officials say that this girl has been in isolation during her infectious period, so she's not a risk to the public. The case isn't related to the previous girl at Elwood Elementary, the case that we saw on Monday. In a statement, the department said there has been no transmission within the school environment to date. So let's take a look at the other 2 cases that we're seeing. The second one is tied to Halifax, a man in his 20s or 30s who came back on Friday before the Atlantic bubble burst. The person is isolating, and because of that case, they are asking anyone who was on Air Canada Flight 8862 from Halifax to Gander arriving on November 20th to call 811 in order to get testing. And the final case is a resident in this province who returned from East Africa. It's someone who's in their 30s or 40s, or 20s or 30s rather, and it is someone who's in the eastern region. Now, officials have been stressing that there is some good news in all of this. All these new cases that we are seeing are tied to previous cases. We're not seeing community transmission where cases are just popping up without any sort of obvious source. That is the situation that they're seeing in Nova Scotia right now. The total is we have 28 active cases. Reporting live in the newsroom, I'm Peter Cowan for Here and Now.
Well, New Brunswick is heightening its COVID restrictions today. 12 new cases in the province brings the total there to 105. Residents in Fredericton, St. John and Moncton are now back to single household bubbles. Masks are mandatory inside and outside in public spaces, and gatherings are now limited to 10 people or fewer with social distancing still in place. Well, today, New Brunswick warned that young adults are the ones who are fueling the spread.
New Brunswickers under the age of 30 now make up more than half of the active cases of COVID-19 in the province. We are particularly worried about how this is spreading among the youth in New Brunswick. And so to reverse the trend of rising case numbers, it is vitally important that young people do 3 things. Stop gathering in large groups, stop traveling, especially to known hotspots in our region, and get tested as soon as symptoms emerge. And we know that in this population, symptoms may be non-existent or very mild. And we also know that the period of contagiousness does occur prior to symptom onset. So it is very, very important to follow public health advice.
Now, Dr. Russell says it's the same in Halifax, where they've seen community spread among young adults, especially those between 18 and 30. Our own Dr. Janice Fitzgerald made a similar plea to young people in this province yesterday.
I understand the inherent drive to socialize. Despite what these gray hairs are saying, I still remember that time in my life too. Choose a small, consistent group of friends to spend time with. Choose places that are less risky and outdoor activities. Socialize with a small group of 5 to 6 close friends in your own home, ensuring physical distancing. Don't share food or drinks. Say goodbye, for now, to the bowl of chips, the plate of nachos, the party pizza. Opt for individual meals and snacks, either prepared by one person or ordered in. If you go to restaurants and bars, be sure you can distance yourself from others outside of your group. If you do interact with others outside of your usual contacts in public places, wear a mask and maintain physical distancing. Keep track of your contacts and download the COVID Alert app.
Well, to Deer Lake now, where, as you heard from Peter Cowan, there was another COVID-19 case today. This time, it's a girl under 19 years of age. Here Now's Colleen Connors visited the town today and has more on the situation there.
Friday morning, everything broke out for us here in Deer Lake.
It's been a long week. Today, another new case of COVID-19, a girl somewhere under the age of 19. She's a close contact of another positive case. Public Health is tracking her contacts. Some could be seen out in Deer Lake today picking up essentials before heading home. Otherwise, the town is quiet.
We can't expect, to see another 1-2 cases, and that would not be unexpected.
Public Health says the town didn't have to take drastic measures like closing the Hodder Memorial Recreation Centre and the town office. But when people started getting sick, that's just what Deer Lake did.
When council made the decision, we were a long time debating back and forth, and this is where, when you have 7 people around a table and debating, it's a marvelous thing. And when the meeting started, that was not even in the cards. But when the meeting ended, we felt it was the best decision. We didn't want to set in panic mode. But we wanted to make it clear that we were serious.
Ball says one major issue in a small town is that everybody knows everybody, and rumors about potential COVID cases can spread just as quickly.
People do exaggerate sometimes, and sometimes it causes a little bit of harm and hurts feelings sometimes. But all I can say, if I was to say anybody today, let's just, before you say anything, let's make sure it's solid evidence.
So, a week into this cluster, what's next? Ball says he needs to see improvement before returning things to normal. For COVID numbers to stop climbing, 0 cases next week. The town won't open until that happens. Now, the town office here and the rec complex are slated to reopen on December 7th. But the mayor says that could very easily change. It all depends on how many COVID cases there are in the coming days and if that number continues to rise. He says that the town will make a decision on that next week. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Deer Lake.
You can see from Colleen's piece there that it was a pretty nice day on the West Coast. Pretty nice day across really the entire island earlier this afternoon. We did see a few showers roll through, then the sun peeking out again in eastern Newfoundland, and then we saw some showers this afternoon. So that is really the story. We do have these cooler temperatures in play as well across the board, only reaching a high near 4 to 6 degrees, but at least we're on the plus side of the mercury. That's where we should be sitting this time of year. -6 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, -9 in Churchill Falls, and then Lab City saw a high near -8 earlier today. Now, wind chills a little cooler, feeling more like the minus single digits. That will generally continue for the next few hours, but if we zoom out there, you can see that next little mess with some showers and even the risk of freezing rain. Not much, but still the risk. I'll talk about that when I come back.
Thank you, Ashley. The investigation into a sudden death in Hopedale is getting more serious. RCMP's Major Crime Unit is now leading the case, and the Forensic Identification Section is being brought in. A 37-year-old man died in that community a week ago today, and police announced its investigation the following morning. The RCMP says people in Hopedale should expect to see more officers in their community. Well, the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary has arrested Kenny Green after a search that spanned many days. Now, this was the scene near Hamilton Avenue at around 6 o'clock last night. Officers making an arrest. Green faces an array of charges, including assault causing bodily harm, as well as assault with a weapon. On Monday, police blocked off part of Empire Avenue for 3 hours as they searched for Green. Some of the officers on scene had rifles. Police didn't find him there, and they later issued a warning for people not to approach the man. Green has a 2014 conviction for manslaughter, and he remains in custody tonight.
Firefighters are sounding the alarm about the city's effort to cut spending at the St. John's Regional Fire Department. The city says it needs to get overtime spending under control, but firefighters say the city is putting the safety of residents and firefighters at risk. Here Now's Mark Quinn reports.
In a fire like this, or any building over 3 stories, a ladder truck like this one is indispensable for dousing flames. and can also be used to evacuate firefighters or residents trapped above a fire. But the Firefighters Association says the city is making a budget cut that will make trucks like this less available, a change that will sometimes let staffing levels drop to a point where the fire department only has enough people to operate one ladder truck instead of two.
I fear that we're going to see a tragic event. I fear our firefighters may see a tragic event in their own evacuation.
Smith says the cuts won't mean job losses, but firefighters say it will mean there will be days when there won't be enough staff working to operate two of these ladders at the same time.
This isn't about protection of jobs and layoffs. There are no layoffs. This isn't about us fighting to keep our people employed. This is about the life and death situations of the public. And some people may say that we're going to be fear-mongering. You know what? It's not fear-mongering. This is the life we live. We live in a life and death situation, and we deal with it every day.
The city says it needs to find savings because COVID and the economic downturn have hit its coffers hard. It says the growing cost of overtime at the fire department needs to be curbed.
We're proud of our firefighters. We're proud of the work they do. But we do have administrative and operational issues in the city that we're responsible to the taxpayer for, and we need to deal with those.
The city doesn't believe trying to reduce spending on overtime will put the public's safety at risk. It says both of its ladder trucks are in use at the same time about 8 times a year, and they'll make sure people are brought in when a second truck is needed.
So what we will do is use existing staff to man up that second ladder to get that rolling right away, and then we will backfill those 2 positions.
Firefighters fear those contingency plans will mean slower response times, something they say could have dire consequences when a building's on fire. They say they want to work with the city to find other ways to reduce spending and keep everyone safe. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, there's a plea from people in this province's food service industry tonight. Don't cancel annual Christmas purchases and buy local. Those businesses are bracing for what's expected to be a tough holiday season, in part because of canceled staff Christmas parties and get-togethers. As Here and Now's Cease Hare reports, this year the industry hopes companies will give the gift of food.
In the early days of the pandemic, restaurants were locked down, off limits to the public. But things have improved since the economy reopened a few months ago. And while things are holding up here at Rocket Bakery in downtown St. John's, they're hoping people will buy into buy local during the normally busy holiday season.
It's important. It's important to all of us. Like I keep saying, every cookie counts. For me, anyway, every cookie counts, yeah.
Christmas is their second busiest season, second only to summer. But already Mansell sees a difference. Fewer bookings for rooms and catering events inside, and organizations rethinking their annual large group events.
There was an event for a client that we usually cater for. We have for years, 8 years we've been catering to them, and they've decided to pull the plug. But what they're going to do instead is a sweet box. So that's a nice alternative, giving a sort of a gift of food to your staff. I mean, it's nice, and you can eat it at your leisure and, in your own bubble. Yes, we do.
She and others in the food service sector encourage companies not to cancel completely, but instead give meals to their hard-working staff for them to eat in the comfort of their own home. It's a holiday gesture that not only shows appreciation, she says, it supports small business.
We're supporting each other. We're able to employ your niece or nephew. They're able to get paid because you've come in and bought a cookie from me. And then they can take their paychecks and go out and buy things from other local businesses. So it's our own little business ecosystem.
Cease Hare, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, just west of where Cease was reporting, the city of St. John's is closing the Railway Coastal Museum. Now, the former Newfoundland Railway headquarters and terminal opened as a museum in 2003. Mayor Danny Breen says the National Historic Site will be repurposed, but he can't say much more than that.
We've discussed this with the Johnson Family Foundation and advised other parties involved. So that will be closing, and we're looking at an opportunity to repurpose that building for public use, and that will be that decision should be announced shortly into 2021.
The whole house shook.
Enough pictures down. It wasn't nice.
An earthquake hits Makkovik. Some people there were jolted awake overnight. We'll hear about the region's most recent seismic scare coming up next.
Well, temperatures over the last 24 hours are 7 degrees warmer than they were 24 hours ago, and that's going to continue to climb as we head through the weekend. I'll have all those details coming up.
We tour the summer fishing places of Labrador's south coast and meet the kings of Petty Harbour. An archival special, Sunday at noon and Monday at 7.
Welcome back. Well, before we get to the weather, people on Labrador's north coast were once again jolted by 2 more earthquakes early this morning.
Yeah, the earthquakes happened around 4 o'clock in the morning. They were felt mostly around Postville and Makkovik, and the strongest earthquake had a magnitude of 3.7. But this is the second time they've had an earthquake this month alone. And back in February, there were 2 more. So that's 6 in a year.
Wow. Now, the 2 earthquakes they felt a few weeks ago though, were much stronger than the quakes last night, about 4.6 in magnitude, but it was still enough last night to give residents quite the fright. I spoke with Michelle Dyson, who works in Makovic, and asked her to describe what happened.
Last night, everybody was asleep in the house, and something woke us up. My husband jumped out to bed, and he's like, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yep." So we jumped up, and I said, "Earthquake." And so we ran upstairs to our kids' rooms are upstairs. So we ran up to them. My daughter met me in the hallway, and she was crying. She's like, "Was it an earthquake?" So she was pretty upset, and I put her back to bed. My husband then was like, couldn't believe it, because the first ones that we experienced, he was actually in Voisey's Bay. So it was quite a shocker to experience another one.
I bet. How did the earthquake last night compare to the ones a few weeks ago?
That was pretty scary. The ones we experienced last night wasn't so bad as the ones we experienced a few weeks ago. The ones then were a lot louder and rougher and scarier. The house shook. The whole house shook. Wow. Knocked pictures down. It wasn't nice.
Wow. So what did you hear and feel last night?
It's not a loud bang that you hear like a blast. It's more like a rumble coming from underneath. You know, like, I guess it is an earthquake, but you feel it in under, and like it has time. Like you hear it coming toward you, and then it seems like it passes. So it's a rumble, and you can feel it in the house.
What do you think about the fact that you've had 2 sets of earthquakes in less than a month?
It's quite disturbing and scary, because we thought we were in the safest place, and now look, we've had 2 a few weeks ago, and then we're having 2 again last night. It's pretty scary. You think that that's just what happens in the movies, you know? You don't ever think you're going to experience it here.
And what are you hearing from other people in the community? How are they reacting?
Really affects them really bad, and myself as well. Like after the 2 that was last night, we like there was 2, and then we settled, and it's like, well, I experienced earthquakes before. That was a few weeks ago. These weren't so bad, but then my furnace cut in, and I jumped again. It's like you're uneasy, and like we're like, we've got people that are afraid to go to work because you're at work and your kids are in school, and like how you get to them. And it was funny, just a few days ago, me and my husband and my kids were sat down to the supper table, and we were saying, like, we always go over what our plans are if there's a fire or whatever. But now we had to tell them, if there's ever an earthquake, we have to come straight to the kitchen table, and we've got to we have to be under the kitchen table for protection. It's like, nobody's ever taught what to do in an earthquake.
Yeah, it's not really something we've had to worry about in this province.
A lot of people here are actually quite traumatized and afraid, you know, of just, we don't know if it's going to happen again. You thought that the last ones we experienced was the ones that you would experience in your whole life, you know, and then it happens again. It's like, how often is this going to keep happening? And there's nothing we can do to prevent it.
Wow. So, Ashley, as you can hear, there seems to be a lot of concern about the possibility of more earthquakes in that area. Just no way of knowing, I guess.
Yeah, I spoke with Alison Bent from Earthquakes Canada and asked if the 2 sets of quakes were related.
Well, we think so. The earthquakes that occurred today are very close to those that occurred on November 4th, which were larger. So in all probability, the 2 that occurred this morning were aftershocks of the earthquakes that were magnitude 4.5 and 4.7 on November 4th.
Okay, so are these quakes happening on a specific fault line? What's causing the earthquakes?
Well, in all parts of Eastern Canada, it's almost impossible to associate any earthquake with a specific fault. Part of that is that they're quite small, and they're occurring usually 10 to 20 kilometers underground. So unless they're big enough that they actually rupture the Earth's surface, we can't associate them with a specific fault. We do know that most earthquakes in Eastern Canada occur in one of 2 types of locations. One is the eastern passive margin, which is basically the whole coast from New England right through to Baffin Bay, and then the other ones are ancient rift structures such as the St. Lawrence. So what this means is that one time in the distant past, and we're talking hundreds of millions of years, these were plate boundaries, similar to what's happening on the west coast of Canada today. And so as the plate boundary moved, and in the case of Labrador, it would be At one time, it was where the mid-Atlantic ridge is today. These areas of weakness are still remaining, and so when earthquakes happen, they're more likely to occur there than in a more solid area such as the Canadian Shield.
Okay, so since this is the third time this year, can we expect more in the future? How would you be able to predict them?
Unfortunately, we cannot predict earthquakes. We know that some areas are far more prone to them than others, but saying whether the next one will occur in this region or another is almost impossible. The coast of Labrador, it does experience earthquakes from time to time. There have not been any truly large earthquakes. Most of them also tend to be a bit further offshore. The ones today were right along the coast, but there have been large earthquakes to the south in the Grand Banks and to the north in Baffin Island. So there may be more earthquakes this year, or today's could be the end of it. We can't say either way. It's unlikely that they will be very large, but again, it's impossible to say that they won't be.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so
I thought
hopefully,
so too.
yeah, hopefully they won't have to deal with any big earthquakes up there.
Nope, not according to what Allison had to say. So that's good. Yeah, it was great. Kind of cool to learn about how they work. And yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, well, from the sky, or from the earth, I should say, to the sky. Time to talk about the weather now. Things were really nice today.
They were, yeah. Sun peeking out, temperatures above zero, which was nice. Let's take a look at where we're sitting right now. Only seeing, or sitting around 4 degrees right now in St. John's, -2 in Batters, so we've dipped below zero, 0 in Corner Brook, and then we've got temperature around -10 for Churchill Falls right now. A little bit of a wind chill on the go as well, -3 it feels like in Stephenville, and -15 for Makovic is what it feels like. So today, not a whole lot going on. Like I said, we did see some increasing cloud, a few showers rolling across the Avalon, and that's generally going to be the story as we head through the overnight tonight. Those showers potential will move off, but then we'll see it move right back in through the overnight, and then some snow moving in for Labrador, Lab West anyway, overnight tonight. And then some showers will move in as we head towards the early morning hours along the south coast. Also want to point out that because temperatures are going to be on the rise tonight, they're going to start below zero and then climb. We could see a period, a few hours or maybe an hour, maybe not even an hour of freezing rain possible in eastern areas, and then into the early morning hours we could see it for the northern peninsula as well as central. So just something to keep in mind as far as maybe some slick areas, but it shouldn't accumulate too much. As far as snowfall for Labrador, though, this takes us through to tomorrow afternoon. We're looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 centimeters of snow. Churchill Falls, you could see a little bit more, certainly anywhere between 10 to as much as 15 centimeters of snow. So here's those temperatures I was talking about, starting below zero, but climbing into the early morning hours. Winds will be generally light in the east and then out of the south for 20 to 40 kilometers per hour for the west. That's why we're going to start to see those temperatures climb again into the early morning hours. -11 overnight for Happy Valley Goose Bay, with the flurries or light snow moving in as well. Looks like a nice evening for the coast. -7 for Cartwright tonight under partly cloudy skies. So tomorrow, those warm temperatures are going to move in, and it's looking like we're going to see rain on the for portions of the west coast. And then again, that potential to either see some flurries or maybe even a little bit of freezing drizzle or freezing rain for the northern peninsula. That's the case for southeastern portions of Labrador as well. That will change over to rain as those temperatures climb. Could even see some peaks of sun in the east, but that rain will move in through the afternoon and evening hours through central, which could be heavy at times into the evening hours. So here's where you'll be sitting temperature-wise. Those winds are going to ramp up again. Southwesterlies 30 to 50 kilometers per hour. 10, 11 degrees it looks like should be the daytime highs. The second half of the day actually looks like we should see some sunshine. As we head towards central, Gander 12 degrees, similar for Grand Falls, Windsor, Harbor, Breton, a little bit cooler, 9 degrees tonight, or tomorrow rather. That's the case really along the southern shore there, and then 12 degrees for Corner Brook tomorrow afternoon. Temperatures will be cooler to start for the northern peninsula and then climb into the single digits. So then everything that does fall should change over to rain, and then the sun should peek out. We'll see some clearing skies into the afternoon for you guys in southeastern portions of Labrador. Cartwright 4 degrees tomorrow. Same thing for Happy Valley Goose Bay with flurries to start, then clearing skies, and then Lab City you should hover around the 0-degree mark. With those winds gusty though out of the west, 30 to 50 kilometers per hour, there will be a wind chill through the afternoon. Things are going to stay mild through Saturday, so that's good news, but it is going to stay unsettled. So we're looking at the potential for some periods of rain moving through, some clearing skies up through Labrador, and then as that low moves off, we get back into that northerly flow. So things will change over to snow for the northern peninsula, southeastern portions of Labrador as well, and then we'll see that sweep across the island as we head into Sunday afternoon. So as far as temperatures go on Saturday, 6 degrees. So the temperatures are going to fall along the west coast, but they're still going to be into the double digits in through central and eastern areas. About 12 degrees it looks like will be the daytime high. 1 in St. Anthony. That's why you're going to see showers to start the morning and then change over to snow. Same thing along the Strait. Happy Valley, Goose Bay, you're looking at a high near -4. And then eventually Sunday, that's when we'll really start to see those temperatures drop back to where we should be sitting for this time of year. It'll slowly start to see those temperatures drop in the east as well as we see those cooler air move in, and then it's going to be cool for Monday. So back into the 1 degree range, although it is going to be quiet for a few days. Monday, Tuesday look nice, 1 to 4 degrees with some sunshine in play. And then for central Newfoundland, you're looking at temperatures back into the single digits as well and quiet. However, on the west coast, probably some lingering flurries in the morning for you on Monday, and then 7 degrees by the time Tuesday rolls around, but it does look like it'll be cloudy for you. For eastern Labrador, you're looking at temperatures dipping into the minus single digits, cool on Monday, and then back into the potential for some snow for Tuesday as the next system rolls in. Same thing for Lab West. Now I wanted to share this lovely shot, some large waves in Otterville. Thank you to John for sharing that with us, and if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Welcome back. Well, it's time for our bi-weekly series, NL in Color, with St. John's Morning Show host Ramraj Shavendran.
And in tonight's two-part episode, Ram speaks with a business professor about coming to Canada as a child from South Korea and changing his behavior to fit in better. Here's that conversation with Andrew Kim.
So there's something under your chair. If you can pick it up, take a look at it.
Oh. That's my mom.
Oh, look at me.
She's my mom.
Did my mom send you this?
So who is in this picture from left to right?
So it's me, my older brother, and my mom. It's in Seoul. It's in South Korea. This is, I think it was a sort of an outing with her students. She was a high school teacher in Korea. It was during one of those outings with her students, and she brought us along.
Do you remember anything about that day?
Absolutely nothing. I think I remember this belt because it's in all the photos, my childhood photos. The buckle had a hologram. I don't have a lot of memories of my childhood in Korea, but that one for some reason is very distinct.
Okay. So you were born in Korea, and then where'd you go? Where'd your family go?
So I was born in Incheon, South Korea. We moved very early on to Seoul. And then when I was 5 years old, we moved to Edmonton. So that's where we first landed in Canada. We moved here because Dad found a job in St. John's. And so in many respects, it was immense relief coming here because it meant a little bit more sort of stability and security, the possibility that we wouldn't have to move again. I also remember the place being different in the sense that there weren't many people like me that looked like me. So I remember growing up in my first few years here, those years being the most difficult, not realizing or not feeling that I belong necessarily. From junior high school up until high school, university, I definitely felt like I didn't belong. I mean, those are formative years, right? So it might be sort of feelings that most people have. When I was in Edmonton, it was made clear to me by other people that I was different.
How?
When I was in grade 7, there was a rhyme that people had about me, right? That it's not appropriate to say on TV or on radio, but race-based, fairly cruel, you know, something I would be sort of mortified to talk about maybe even up until a few years ago. But yeah, that had a sort of a distinct sort of impact on me, and sort of helped me sort of realize that I was different, right, in certain contexts, right. And so when I came here, people didn't have that kind of rhyme when I was growing up, but it definitely sort of made me a bit more sort of careful about sort of what I did or what I said or sort of how I behaved. But I think I felt sort of most connected to sort of my own identity, and so most comfortable sort of, where I am when after grad school, when I started meeting different people and traveled to Korea and sort of help understand sort of my own sort of identity and racial identity in particular. That's something that took a longer time for me, I guess, than others, just because of sort of, where I grew up, there being sort of few reference points in terms of what I felt I could be, I should be. As a sort of younger adult, I learned about, well, in linguistics, they call this term, there's a term called code switching. So it's when you shift mid-conversation between two languages. As I was growing up, I never felt comfortable speaking Korean. I could understand Korean perfectly because my mom spoke Korean to me, but I never spoke Korean. But as an adult, as I met more Korean people and became more comfortable and able to speak Korean, I realized that talking both in English and Korean at the same time was something that people like me did, and it was sort of a way to sort of understand my own identity. So that was for me, that was big, right?
How old were you when you started doing that?
Mid-20s maybe. So.
And how did it feel?
I felt empowering, right? It felt empowering, and that's also the time when I started also like feeling okay about sort of like eating Korean food.
How did you feel about eating Korean food growing up?
Well, I didn't. My mom used to think that I didn't like Korean food. I did. I secretly did, right? but I just never felt comfortable eating it.
Why?
I guess it was kind of one of the things that made me different, right?
That question, we touched on it earlier, where are you from? How do you feel when you get asked that question? What goes through your mind?
Up until very recently, I didn't feel anything. I conditioned myself to answer that question with one word, right? I would say Korea, because most times I would think that that's the answer people want to hear, right? More recently, I thought about sort of what that question means, and it's really a question that tries to get to identity, right? And identity is complex, and so it's not fair to use just one word to answer a question like that. And so the way I try to answer it now is through a very brief narrative, right?
Is Newfoundland home for you?
Yes, absolutely. It's the place that sort of, educated me and that gave me my start in my career. But it's, I think, also one of many homes for me, right? And I think that speaks to sort of, people's backgrounds and lived experiences that can accommodate many things, not just, a singular sort of place or home.
NL in Color will be back after this commercial break.
We're turning now to part 2 of tonight's episode of NL in Color. It took years and a trip back to Korea before Andrew Kim felt at home in this country.
Yeah, the conversation continues in part 2, starting with a story about winter and the perception of friendliness in this province.
Newfoundland has a reputation of being, one of the phrases I've heard a lot is friendly Newfoundland. Newfoundlanders are the most friendliest people you ever meet. What do you think about that slogan, or that, I guess, that saying?
I think in many respects it's true. I mean, I remember, for example, on our first winter here, we had never seen snow like this before, and so we didn't have shovels. The first snowfall that we experienced, we had to use laundry hampers or baskets to move the snow because we just, didn't know how. And our neighbor, they had 2 or 3 sons, and the whole family sort of cleared our driveway for us, right? And I'd never seen anything like that before, right? And day-to-day interactions, there are not very many places, for example, where when you're walking on the street, people just say hi to you, right? I've been to many places around the world, and that's not a very common thing. So in many respects, that's absolutely true, right? But I also think that sort of, being sort of friendly and welcoming has different layers. Saying hello, or sort of acknowledging that you want to welcome other people is one thing, but to truly sort of include them is different, right? And it takes more than just necessarily sort of words or behaviors.
What does it take?
It takes, in all aspects of society, real change to sort of acknowledge different values people might have, different sort of ways of thinking and knowing, different opinions. It's important to sort of affect social change, right, in a positive way. For people to sort of be mindful of what they communicate and how they communicate. Things like, for example, where are you from, right? What the meaning behind that is. Things like, for example, I probably don't get this as much as before, but I used to get a lot of statements like, or questions about whether or not I was a student, right? And so, and that could be a very innocuous sort of statement or question. And I used to think that, it's because maybe I look young, right? But it could also mean maybe because people who look like you, that's what they are, right? Maybe you couldn't be, for example, somebody in a place or position in society other than that, right? I also remember maybe a couple of months ago, there was a couple of gentlemen that came to my apartment, and they wanted to talk about scripture, right? And they had a little brochure, and so I was looking through it as they were talking, and there was a picture there of heaven or paradise, right? And I remember looking at that picture and thinking, there's only white people in this picture. And I said, there's nobody that looks like me in this photo. They didn't have a really sort of a clear response to that, but those are things that sort of I see. And then the other thing I think that's really important for society to improve and be better is just acknowledging the sort of the biases that we have. I think that's one of the issues when you say a place is very friendly and welcoming is that it sort of masks some of the biases or harm that can be caused on other people. And so it's important not to do that, not to be dismissive. I think one of the things that you've heard very recently in media or in social media is about Canada not being racist or Newfoundland and Labrador not being racist. But I mean, oftentimes those statements are made by people who don't have the experiences that qualify them to say that, right, or make such claims. So it's important, I think, not to dismiss those experiences by making general statements like that. And also, if you happen to say or do something, even if it's unintentional, that might make people feel like they're excluded, don't be defensive about it, right? Just to sort of listen and acknowledge and, try to respect that person's opinion and try to do things differently next time. I think that's what I thought a lot about after, talking to you and thinking about sort of what does it take for society to change, right? I think it really takes individuals to change, right?
So looking back to Andrew in that picture over there, and to Andrew now, how do you feel about the journey you've been on so far?
When I was younger, I felt really out of place. It was the fact that I didn't feel like I belonged was profound to me, right? It was the only thing that mattered, right? And I'm not sure right now if it's the case that I feel like I belong more, or the need to belong is less important to me. But I definitely feel better about myself. Those experiences that I had growing up sort of made me sort of, I don't know if this is the right way of saying it, but sort of wise about sort of how I sort of deal and cope with things, because it's probably not a good thing for kids to sort of experience some of those sort of things that sort of I experienced, but it did make me a lot more resilient. And I feel lucky also to have grown up in different places and sort of experienced different things. And I feel a more whole person because of all of that. I also think that there are some things that I have to unlearn that, talking to you has sort of helped me sort of realize I need to be a bit more proactive about. So one of the things is like the fact that I'm not a very social person. I mean, some of that could be innate, but I think some of that sort of also learned behavior, and it's something that really I should try to address, because I don't know if it's necessarily the case that there's something that I need to be afraid of when if I sort of run into people and think that they're like something bad might happen, right? Because some bad things happened before when I was younger, right?
All right. Good about that? How are you feeling?
Oh, good, yeah. I didn't expect this, but are you gonna take this, or?
No, I don't want to keep a picture of you as a child.
Thank you.
And thanks to St. John's Morning Show, Ramraj Sharvendran, and CBC's Mark Cumby for that.
Yes, and we'll have another episode of NL in Color for you coming up in about 2 weeks' time.
Hey, it's Aoife.
Farai.
And Columbus.
And we're three really good friends who really love to eat.
Join us as we put our taste buds to the test and discover the amazing food around St. John's.
We ordered the same dish at 3 places and then we vote for a favorite.
Let's get stuffed!
The federal government has finalized purchase agreements with 5 of 7 COVID-19 vaccine makers, and today the Deputy Chief Public Health Officer said some Canadians could be getting vaccinated in just a few months from now. But as David Cochran reports, there are still hurdles to clear.
There's no greater question in Canada right now than when can I get my vaccine? So experts tried to give an answer.
We expect certain vaccines to become available in early 2021. However, it's important to note that the initial supply of these vaccines will be limited.
Early in 2021 likely means January. Limited means about 6 million doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines by the end of March.
We're looking at a population of about 3 million Canadians being sort of at the beginning to be vaccinated.
But even that modest start depends on regulatory approval. The U.S. and Europe are on track for December. Canada says it won't be far behind.
We're expecting to make a final decision on the vaccines around the same time as both the U.S. FDA and the European Medicines Agency.
And so the government is scrambling to get the freezers, syringes, and swabs it will take to start a national vaccination program in the middle of a Canadian winter, while the drug companies push for final approval and try to scale manufacturing to meet an insatiable demand. There's a lot to do, and a lot can go wrong.
And for people that are saying specific dates, I think that's great that they've got the confidence in those numbers. But from what we're seeing, there really are a lot of moving parts.
The overall plan is to use those initial doses for high-risk populations and frontline essential workers. Deliveries will ramp up over the spring and the summer and as other vaccines get approved for use. If it all works, the majority of Canadians could be vaccinated by next fall. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
Well, before we finish tonight, we'd like to tell you about 2 beloved members of our Here and Now family. They are retiring tonight.
Now, you likely won't know their names, but you definitely have seen and probably appreciated their work as well.
Done.
Eddie Kennedy has been with CBC for 44 years, and he's been lugging around that big camera for most of it. His career as a videographer took him from Labrador City to Gander to St. John's.
Eddie always kept an eye out for a beautiful shot. Whenever he went to a new community, he'd scope out the best places to capture scenic video to showcase wherever he was, and he'd find the perfect spot to put a reporter when they were going in front of the camera.
Yeah, he certainly told me where to stand many times.
Where to go.
Meticulous about lighting and composition. Truly an excellent cameraman, despite his fetish for wide-angle lenses. And fearless, the go-to person for recording tense and combative situations, some of which he caused. Eddie's always at the front, catching the action, and we're going to miss that kind of old-school talent. But I know during the pandemic he's fixed up most of his house, which means in his retirement he can spend more time with his grandkids and maybe get onto his soccer fields. Congratulations, Eddie.
Yeah. And we know she probably wouldn't appreciate this because she's more of a behind-the-scenes type person.
Yeah, but we have to mention that our super secret weapon, Carolyn Atkinson, our senior media librarian, is also retiring today.
Well, you got to figure out which side you put in the clock. But the clock is on your
Carolyn has been with CBC for 37 years. Here at Here and Now, Carolyn plays a crucial role.
She definitely does. We obviously rely so much on video to help tell stories, and we kind of consider Carolyn our memory bank. If it was recorded by a CBC camera person, Carolyn knows about it. She is the keeper of our stories and the finder of all of our footage.
The kind of knowledge that's irreplaceable, and we don't know what we're going to do without her. But we wish her the very best in a well-deserved retirement. And check our spelling, Carolyn. We still need you.
Good night, everyone.